Mixing a shooter with RPG elements is nothing new, but when the creators of the Halo franchise tackle such a mashup, it garners attention. Combining the mechanics and vibe of Bungie's prior games with role-playing trappings, Destiny is looking to walk the line without stumbling. Hundreds of years from now, Destiny proposes that civilization will come into contact with a massive entity called the Traveler, which will lead them into a golden age of progression. Eventually, the fun will be spoiled by a darkness hoping to destroy the Traveler and all living things with it. You play as a Guardian, and it's your task to protect what's left of the Traveler and drive the darkness from the solar system.
Well fought.
You're here.
It's an interesting, if formulaic, setup, but it suffers in its execution.
Don't look at me. Better say something.
For a persistent online game, there's not much interaction with other players, and the story itself never flowers. With just a handful of cutscenes and just as few pivotal characters, you never come to truly despise the antagonists. You're just expected to accept that the darkness is bad and should be destroyed. The few loose ends are never tied, and there's simply no tension in the prose whatsoever.
She's saying you owe us, Guardian.
I understand.
If it weren't for your ghost companion constantly chiming in, you'd have no idea what was even going on.
This is fallen territory. We aren't safe here. I have to get you to the city.
You begin by choosing a race, and then from one of 3 classes. Titans are combat machines with high defense. Hunters take on the typical recon role, while Warlocks can be considered the spellcasters of the bunch. At level 15, a subclass becomes available for more flexibility. For a game of its ilk, appearance customization is sorely lacking. Bungie's games are typically filled to the hilt with options, but it's a little more tricky with Destiny. Since it takes place in a persistent world, everything is included in a map screen that facilitates shooting from one mode to the next rather seamlessly, but slowly. There's a campaign, and other players can jump to your aid, provided you're not sequestered inside one of its respawn-free areas. Using the map, it's easy to plot your way through it, ensuring that you're never in over your head. Public events organically spawn right in front of you at times, asking you and other players to complete a short-term objective. There are also strike missions, where you and 2 other players work through a dungeon and then confront a boss at the end. Patrol missions are as close to an MMO as Destiny gets, with beacons triggering events and objectives to tackle. No matter how you look at it, there are plenty of ways to engage with Destiny's enemies. Bungie is known just as much for its robust multiplayer suites as its engrossing campaigns, and while there is opportunity to compete against others in Destiny, it falls well short of the benchmark. The modes are slim, with variants of capture and hold and deathmatch. The maximum amount of players per match is 12, but some of the modes feature teams of 3. There's nothing particularly compelling about any of the competitive multiplayer out of the box, but Bungie has the ability to augment them as time goes on. The netcode is strong, as we've never experienced a single bit of lag. The in-game story does a poor job of providing context or motivation, but you can go to Bungie's official website or companion app and utilize your in-game achievements to attain more insight into its world. This grimoire allows you to examine virtual trading cards unlocked through in-game achievements that provide more information on just about everything in the game. There's just no reason for it not to be included inside the actual game. Destiny is Bungie's first multi-platform release, but that hasn't muted the results on the PlayStation 4. Wading into the same pool as some of the more impressive PC games, the game features an especially crisp display with razor-sharp textures and plenty of polygons to make everything believable. Running in full 1080p with a hitch-free frame rate, on a technical level, there are few games that equal it on the platform. Considering it features persistent sprawling worlds, this is no small feat. The art is immediately familiar, as Bungie's take on a future sci-fi world has managed to span multiple franchises. The color palette is diverse and vivid, and while the game could use a few more enemy types, their models are impressively detailed. Enemy animation is a weak spot, as most will simply trudge towards you in a repetitive gait. With gorgeous, eye-popping art around every corner, few will be disappointed with the visuals in Destiny. Marty O'Donnell has been creating stirring music for the Halo franchise since the beginning, and he picks up where he left off with Destiny. The choral arrangements, mixed with sweeping synths, bring back a lot of great memories and help create new ones, as they dynamically ebb and flow based on the in-game action. Weapon reports sound great even if they're not entirely original, while the sound of the jet bikes also mimic another very popular sci-fi franchise. The surround sound placement is impeccable, however the audio mix goes a little too heavy on the music at times, and there's no option to adjust any of the levels yourself. If there's one thing that Bungie has perfected over the years, it's creating first-person shooting that just feels right. It's replicated that success for the most part here. While there's just a handful of different weapon types, with the exception of the shotgun, most feature minimal recoil. Destiny features one of the most generous auto-aims we've ever encountered. On the default sensitivity setting, enemies also tend to run at the exact same speed that you're able to adjust your aim while scoped, making targeting aliens on the move especially easy. These concessions make perfect sense due to the importance of headshots within its RPG framework. Destiny makes use of the shooter du jour double jump, and it's handled differently for each of the three classes. It's hard to get a handle on for the Titan class, and the Warlock uses an awkward glide. The Hunter is the most nimble in the air, but even after leveled up, none of them ever get to a place where they feel just right. Each class has a super that's executed with 2 shoulder buttons at once, and a melee using the right shoulder button. The lack of a pause button keeps things intense, and reviving teammates provides a safety net. Piloting vehicles is intuitive and fun, but otherwise, there's not much variety in the interaction. The role-playing elements in Destiny won't approach the black bottomless pit of depth seen in a lot of MMOs, but the typical FPS player won't want for more. In the game's hub, there are merchants to purchase armor, weapons, and much more. Everything can be leveled up in addition to your Guardian, who will gain new powers and improvements on existing ones. There's some light resource gathering and crafting, but they're not essential to moving through the game. The typical gameplay loop involves choosing a mission from the map, completing it, and then returning to the tower to reap the rewards. If you follow this roadmap, Destiny puts up very little resistance. You're generally always a level or 2 ahead of the enemy, and it eventually makes progressing through the game feel like a formality. If you do want to make it more challenging, you have some leeway in the order you tackle the missions, and once you've reached the level cap with at least 1 Guardian, you can increase mission difficulty manually. The multiplayer Crucible lets you bring in your weapons and gear, but they're nerfed to create an even playing field. It results in a decent weapon balance, but the crotchety matchmaking means too many games end up lopsided. As you play, you earn rewards just like in the campaign, but they're only useful for single-player elements, which wear out their welcome at level 20. The campaign has a soft level cap of 20, and you'll get there just as you finish the story. At around 16 hours, for some, its threadbare mission types will have brought their brunt to bear long before then. The post-game solo content is repeating the same missions against emboldened opponents. However, you do gain the ability to earn Crucible marks for improved multiplayer gear once you've hit level 20. Speaking of which, the Crucible is a big step back for Bungie. With just a few game types and no customization, it's hard to be encouraged by its long-term prospects. Raids are already happening, and there's a slew of DLC on the way, but the players who will truly get their money's worth from Destiny are those who love grinding for rares. A certain segment of players is going to fall in love with Destiny, but most will find it repetitive in just about every way. The lack of a compelling story could make it easily feel like going through the motions, and it's bereft of the typical Bungie charm, but the thrilling gunplay holds things together until its unsatisfying conclusion. The multiplayer can be interesting, but it's lean. In this case, of this mashup, players with an RPG bent will glean much more from it than Bungie's typical customer base.